You didn't arrive here by accident. Something within you, ancient and quietly radiant, has been guiding you far longer than your conscious mind realizes. Not the part of you that scrolls or distracts, but the deeper awareness, the silent witness that feels a shift before life shows evidence of it. As you move through these words, a memory may begin to resurface, not of the past, but of who you have always been before the world told you otherwise. Before we continue, pause for a moment. Tell me in the comments, have you been feeling this shift in your life? Yes or no? Maybe lately life hasn't made sense. The familiar feels foreign. Plans that once felt solid have crumbled, and the rhythm that guided your decisions no longer matches who you are becoming. It's as if your inner world has changed faster than your outer reality can keep up. People tell you it's stress, coincidence, or bad timing, but something deeper inside whispers no. This means something. Because in the symbolic language of the inner world, upheaval is rarely chaos without purpose. Sometimes life must become unrecognizable before truth can make itself known. What if the discomfort you're feeling is not collapse, but preparation? What if everything falling away is clearing space for a version of you that is truer, wiser, and more aligned than anything you've ever known? The unconscious doesn't communicate with neat explanations. It uses symbols, repeating patterns, emotional surges, dreams that won't fade, and a strange magnetic pull toward change. And when those signs are ignored or dismissed, life will remove what is false, not as punishment, but as correction. The real tragedy is not that things fall apart. The tragedy is that so many people misunderstand the process and retreat just before the breakthrough. They numb themselves, cling to the familiar, or assume they are failing when in truth, they are transforming. But something in you is listening. That simple fact means you are already crossing a threshold. The old way of living cannot hold the person you are becoming. In the chapters ahead, we will move through 7 powerful signs that your life isn't collapsing, it's opening. If even a few resonate, then you are already in the initiation. The first sign of deep inner transformation is this. You begin to question what you once accepted without hesitation, not out of anger or rebellion, but because a deeper intelligence within refuses to settle for unquestioned truths. You start examining the beliefs that shaped you, the relationships you built your identity around, and the goals you once chased without pause. And instead of clarity, you may first feel confusion, because the answers that once felt like bedrock now feel incomplete. This questioning is not a sign of being lost. It is the beginning of remembering. Just like a seed splits apart in the darkness before rising toward the sun, your inner world may be breaking open so something more authentic can emerge. The identity you wore for survival, belonging, or approval cannot accompany you into this next stage. And although externally nothing may seem different, inside everything is shifting. Thoughts feel unfamiliar. Habits lose their grip. Plans that once felt necessary now feel irrelevant. Even victory in old pursuits feels strangely empty. This discomfort is not your enemy, it is the teacher. Life removes illusions first, meaning confusion often comes before clarity. What is dissolving is not your life, but the outdated version of yourself that was built from expectations rather than truth. It can feel like a death, the death of who you believed you needed to be, the death of roles you carried, the death of dreams that were never yours. But this death is symbolic, and every meaningful rebirth begins with one. You are not being destroyed, you are being refined. And with this shift, you may begin noticing that the people, routines, and environments that once felt familiar now seem distant, incompatible, or emotionally weightless. The identity you once held is loosening its grip, and with it, the masks fall away. There may be grief, because even false identities can feel like home when you've lived inside them long enough. But beneath that grief is a new kind of freedom, quiet, steady, and undeniable. You are not breaking down, you are breaking open. This is the moment when deeper questions rise. Who am I without the expectations of others? What do I truly desire, not for validation but for meaning? What part of me has been waiting to finally breathe? These questions are gateways, and once they appear, the journey cannot be undone. Life begins speaking differently through signs, synchronicities, aligned encounters, and inner knowing. Nothing is random anymore. True transformation begins the moment you stop listening to the noise of the world and start hearing the voice beneath it, the one that has always been yours. So trust the unraveling, trust the discomfort, trust the shift. Because you are not moving toward a new life someday. You are already in it. Now we continue with the second sign, a subtle yet undeniable sense that you are growing apart from the person you once were. In depth psychology, this is known as the dissolution of the old persona, the outer identity that once acted as a shield, a performance, a survival layer. This doesn't happen with sudden drama. It begins softly, a strange fading of interest in what used to excite you, a quiet detachment from routines that once defined you, an inner knowing that what once fit your life no longer does. Hobbies lose flavor. Small talk feels empty. Old conversations feel repetitive. The life that once seemed clear now feels misaligned, like wearing clothing tailored for someone you no longer are. And though everything may look the same from the outside, inside, something irreversible has already begun. It begins subtly, almost imperceptibly. The way you perceive the world shifts, as if someone quietly replaced the lens through which you interpret reality. Things that once felt meaningful or alive no longer hold the same resonance. Memories, routines, and identities that once shaped your emotional landscape now feel distant, not rejected, not resented, but simply finished. There is a softness to the detachment, a quiet knowing that something has run its course. You feel this shift not just in thought but in your body, in the stillness between breaths, in the moments where silence seems louder than spoken words. The past no longer grips you the way it once did. This isn't emotional numbness, it is evolution. It is the soul signaling that growth is happening, even if the conscious mind hasn't fully caught up. Depth psychology names this stage as individuation, the sacred process of becoming who you truly are, rather than who the world conditioned you to be. It may feel uncertain or confusing, but beneath that confusion is an unseen clarity beginning to form. You no longer have interest in maintaining identities that feel forced or outdated. Labels, expectations, and roles once worn for belonging or survival now feel like costumes from a story you are no longer interested in acting out. And yes, there is grief, a soft ache for the version of yourself you once tried so hard to maintain, a bittersweet farewell to patterns and people who once felt essential. But even this grief is holy. It is the inner world making space for expansion, a spiritual pruning designed not to diminish you but to free you. As this inner shift unfolds, new questions begin to rise, questions that cannot be ignored or rushed. Who am I now? What holds meaning? What aligns with the truth awakening within me? These questions are not signs of being lost. They are proof that you are beginning to live consciously rather than automatically. You may find yourself seeking solitude, not because life has pushed you away, but because quiet becomes nourishment. Reflection becomes oxygen. Stillness becomes sanctuary. While the external world continues its noise and demands, something inside you begins to listen to a deeper voice, one that has always existed, but was once muted by survival, expectation, or distraction. That inner voice speaks without urgency. It says, you are shedding, you are evolving, you are returning to yourself. This detachment from what no longer resonates is not collapse, it is metamorphosis. The most authentic version of you does not emerge through clinging, it emerges through graceful release. When you allow what no longer fits to fall away, you create the opening through which your next chapter can arrive. Trust the space being created. Something significant is making its way to you. The third sign of spiritual awakening reveals itself when you begin questioning what once felt non-negotiable. The structures that shaped your life, status, productivity, validation from others, suddenly lose their weight. A shift occurs quietly but unmistakably. The ambitions you once chased feel distant, the approval you once sought no longer feels necessary, and the standards you once placed upon yourself begin to dissolve. This change is not apathy, it is refinement. It is clarity emerging from within. At this stage, you begin to see beyond the script handed to you by society. The persona, the carefully constructed identity you built for acceptance and stability, begins to crack. Through those cracks, a deeper truth whispers. You begin viewing life from a different vantage point, not above others but closer to your own essence. Material achievements may still arrive, but they no longer define your worth. Praise may still come, but it no longer controls your direction. Instead, new questions surface. What awakens my spirit? What feels meaningful? What brings genuine aliveness? These are not casual curiosities, they are thresholds. Often, these questions emerge at moments of discomfort, when the mind realizes that old definitions of success are no longer enough. Something inside you recognizes that fulfillment is found not in accumulation or performance, but in depth, authenticity, connection, and presence. As priorities shift, relationships may shift as well. Some connections begin to feel strained, shallow, or out of rhythm with the person you are becoming. Conversation that once felt stimulating now feels repetitive. You may feel alone, not because others have abandoned you, but because you are outgrowing the version of yourself that once kept you aligned with them. This loneliness is not a void, it is sacred space. And into that space, new resonance enters. People aligned with your emerging frequency begin appearing, quietly, synchronistically, almost as if called by an invisible signal. This questioning is not collapse, it is awakening. You are not losing your identity, you are uncovering the self beneath the performance. The world may try to pull you back into familiarity, into expectations, into roles, but something inside you has already changed. The illusion has been seen. The spell has lifted. You can no longer pretend that the shallow is meaningful. This is the beginning of alignment, the unfolding of a life shaped not by survival, but by truth. And it brings you to the fourth sign, the rising of intuition. It begins gently, an inner knowing that doesn't shout but hums, a soft pull toward certain decisions, a subtle contraction when something is not aligned, an inexplicable confidence in choices that logic cannot fully justify. This inner guidance does not speak in fear or urgency, it speaks in resonance. Your intuition becomes a quiet companion, wise, patient, ancient. You begin sensing energy before words. You feel the emotional temperature of a room the moment you enter. Choices no longer rely solely on reason. They become embodied, instinctive, clear. This guidance is not fantasy. It is the subconscious mind communicating in its oldest language. At first, intuition comes in glimpses, a sudden clarity, a flutter in the heart, a heaviness in the body, a whisper in the silence. But as you begin trusting it, you recognize it has been speaking to you your entire life. Its voice grows louder when your old identity begins dissolving. During upheaval, when the mind scrambles for structure and certainty, your intuition rises like a lantern in the dark, guiding not with explanation, but with direction. You find yourself drawn towards certain people or opportunities without knowing why. You avoid others without needing evidence. This is not irrational, it is intelligence beyond logic. As you follow this inner compass, life begins rearranging itself. Patterns reveal meaning. Situations that once confused you suddenly make sense. What once required endless reasoning becomes instantly clear. Your soul has begun leading. There comes a moment when the mind finally quiets, not because life has become perfect, but because doubt no longer commands your decisions. The endless inner debate fades. The hesitation dissolves. You've connected with the deeper current within yourself, and that place sees without confusion. You no longer search for validation or direction outside yourself, because you've discovered a source of certainty that lives in your inner stillness. This doesn't mean the journey becomes effortless, but it does become honest, aligned, grounded, real. You begin trusting the subtle pull guiding you forward, even when you can't articulate why. There's a gentle confidence now, a knowing presence walking with you. You start paying attention to the silence between thoughts, to the warmth or contraction in your body, to the way peace naturally appears when something aligns with your truth. This form of guidance isn't new. It has always been there. It is ancient, a language older than logic, older than fear. And now that you're finally listening, you begin to realize you have never walked alone. There is a wisdom inside you that remembers who you are, even when your mind forgets. And as you follow that inner voice, life doesn't just move, you unfold. Then something else awakens, a fire not chaotic, not desperate, but steady and undeniable. It's a fire that refuses stagnation, a flame that refuses to let you shrink into repetition or familiarity. You feel called toward growth, not as a trend, not as performance, but as a sacred necessity. What once felt fulfilling now feels empty. Old answers can't soothe new questions rising from deeper layers of your being. This longing isn't shallow. It doesn't want distraction. It wants evolution. You stop searching for entertainment and start seeking expansion. You gravitate toward teachings, perspectives, or conversations that feel like keys unlocking forgotten rooms within your consciousness. Your hunger for wisdom grows, not to accumulate information, but to remember truths you once abandoned. This is the soul stretching awake. This is the moment where something inside whispers, "I refuse to remain unconscious." You begin exploring dreams you buried, parts of yourself you suppressed, pieces of your identity you once feared or neglected. You feel called not just to heal, but to understand, not to erase your wounds, but to learn from them. Growth becomes devotion. The questions you ask shift from survival to authenticity. You begin asking, who am I becoming? What parts of me have never been lived? Where am I still acting out of fear? These questions aren't meant to punish you. They're invitations, thresholds. They mark the end of the unconscious life and the beginning of the intentional one. In this phase, growth feels less like accumulation and more like subtraction. You are no longer building a persona. You are removing what blocks your essence. And yes, sometimes this shedding feels like loss, like rupture, like everything familiar is slipping away. But this falling apart is sacred preparation. Soil must be cleared before new seeds can take root. Naturally, relationships begin to shift. You start valuing honesty more than comfort, depth more than routine. You stop molding yourself to fit spaces that require you to shrink. You stop fearing distance if authenticity requires it. The masks you once wore, effortlessly, automatically begin slipping away. In their absence, something steady and undeniable emerges, your truth. And then another sign appears, the urge to free yourself from toxic patterns and connections you once tolerated. It doesn't come as irritation or impatience, it comes as clarity. What once felt normal now feels heavy. What once felt like belonging now feels like confinement. The dynamics that once echoed familiarity now feel incompatible with the person you are becoming. You are not turning cold, you are turning real. Some connections weren't meant to walk beside your evolution. They were reflections of a version of you that no longer exists. Where you once accepted chaos as intimacy, inconsistency as passion, or emotional instability as love, you now recognize those patterns as the cost of abandoning yourself. And suddenly you simply stop. You stop explaining yourself. You stop chasing. You stop bending, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. This is not rejection, it is self-return. In this clarity, you begin understanding something essential. Your energy is sacred. Your inner peace is priceless. Your emotional world is not a place for others to discard their wounds onto. And once you recognize this, you can no longer pretend you don't. Letting go is painful. Endings carry grief even when they are necessary. But this grief is holy. It marks the end of self-betrayal. And into this new space, slowly, quietly, something remarkable begins to happen. Life brings you people who reflect your evolution rather than your wounds. People who feel like understanding, like calm, like truth. People who speak the language of presence. People who don't require you to shrink to be loved. This isn't collapse. This is liberation. This is the death of what kept you small, and the birth of alignment. When you stop holding on to what drains you, space opens for what elevates you. And what begins to enter your life feels different. It isn't loud, unstable, or demanding. It arrives quietly, almost sacredly, with a gentleness that feels unfamiliar because it does not take from you, it nourishes you. This kind of connection honors your evolution, recognizes your path, and holds your heart with reverence rather than expectation. You are not losing people, you are shedding illusions. You are not breaking bonds, you are breaking cycles. This is not rejection, it is redirection. And as your inner world becomes more honest, your outer reality begins to reflect that shift with astonishing precision. The best era of your life never begins with addition, it begins with release. And now, you are ready. Seventh sign, a deep and unmistakable detachment begins to rise within you. A quiet but powerful separation from the things that once felt important but no longer speak to your soul. It doesn't happen all at once. It comes softly at first, subtle, like a breeze before a storm. The people, the routines, the identities, and the versions of yourself that once felt permanent start to loosen their grip. The emotional weight they carried seems to dissolve. You are not turning away out of bitterness or resentment. Rather, something within you is being called forward, toward alignment, toward clarity, toward truth. Your inner world is undergoing alchemy, dissolving attachments that no longer match your frequency. This withdrawal is not avoidance, it is release. It is the shedding of armor you no longer need. You may notice laughter that once felt genuine now feels forced. Places that once felt comforting now feel foreign. Even the voice inside your mind begins to shift tone. Familiar spaces feel unfamiliar. Familiar people feel distant. And though part of you may grieve this, another part recognizes it as sacred. Jung taught that the psyche evolves not through addition but through integration, and sometimes integration requires subtraction. The discomfort that arises is not punishment, it is purification. So if you find yourself questioning why old pleasures feel hollow, why old conversations feel repetitive, or why your dreams are changing, know this. You are not falling behind. You are being renewed. You are being emptied so that life may pour something truer into the space that opens. What once defined you slowly becomes memory, not because it was meaningless, but because its lesson is complete. You are returning to something essential, something eternal. And the strange part is that nothing externally may change dramatically, yet internally, everything is rearranging. Old fears lose their influence. Old obligations lose their grip. What once demanded urgency now barely stirs you. In this stillness, in this subtle uncoupling, something profound awakens, not loud, not forceful, but steady and clear. A knowing, a truth, a quiet pull that does not argue or justify, it simply invites you. This is not a path of escape. It is a path of reclamation. You are not running from life. You are returning to yourself. And in that return, clarity settles like dawn breaking over a dark horizon. You no longer feel compelled to be everywhere or with everyone. You long to be whole. And anything that fractures your inner peace begins to fall away naturally. Honor this process. Grieve if you need to, but do not resist. The more you allow what is leaving to leave, the more space you create for what is meant to arrive. This is the threshold, the in-between, the silent metamorphosis between identities, between chapters, between lives. It is not a loss, it is passage, a sacred transition that prepares the soil for new roots, new growth, new life. And if these words meet you at the right moment, it is because you already feel it. Something is shifting, something is awakening. The old self is dissolving, and what is emerging is not a better version but the truest one. The one who remembers what it means to move in resonance with the soul. Trust this detachment. It is not the ending. It is the quiet beginning of everything you are destined to become. So what unfolds when you stop clinging to remnants of what has passed and instead open yourself to what longs to emerge? What begins to change when you stop resisting the rhythm of your inner evolution and start aligning with it? A profound awakening rises, not a temporary shift, but a deep inner recalibration. You are not simply rearranging your life. You are widening the lens of your awareness. You are stepping into alignment with a truth that does not need control to feel safe. A peace that is not conditional. This is not just another chapter. It is an initiation into a new way of being. You may not fully recognize it yet, but you can feel it. It speaks through your longing for depth, through your exhaustion with pretense, through your refusal to remain where your soul no longer fits. These are not random emotions. They are invitations. Invitations to live awake, to live aligned, to live from truth rather than fear. This is the moment when the scaffolding of the old self loosens and the blueprint of something more authentic begins to form. Jung reminded us, transformation does not happen by pretending to be better, but by embracing all that we are, light and shadow together. The path ahead will not ask for perfection. It will ask for presence. It will not require fearlessness. It will ask for honesty. The best stage of your life is not something that arrives from the outside. It grows from within. It forms in silence, in reflection, in courage, in surrender, in the willingness to release what no longer supports who you are becoming. So stay open, stay grounded, stay curious, because what is unfolding is not about becoming more. It is about becoming real. And if something inside you feels awakened by these words, it is because a deeper part of you is already stepping forward. You are not walking this journey alone. We walk it together through reflection, through truth, through awakening. And this is only the beginning. If this message stirred something deep within you, don't stop here. The next video will take you further, into healing, into clarity, into the version of you waiting just beyond hesitation. It may be the shift your soul has been waiting for. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and join a community committed to depth, expansion, and real inner transformation. You are not alone on this path. I'll meet you in the next video, where together we continue becoming who we were always meant to be.